Today we're going to talk a little bit about persuasion. I'd like you to think about these three questions. If someone is persuading me to buy into a product or an idea, how would I decide if it's worth my time and investment? Do I blindly accept sales pitches for products or ideas without thinking and evaluating? What are my favorite commercials? Why do I like them? Let's talk about the first one. How do I decide if it's worth my time or investment? Well, oftentimes that deals with money, or you do some research. But oftentimes it's the second question that we overlook. Many of the products we buy today, we buy because they're funny or there's some sort of sex appeal, and all these things require the reader or the person watching to suspend their thinking, to rely on something other than that. And what we want to focus on is what's most important, which is thinking, evaluating the products, the ideas. We want to become intelligent consumers. Intelligent consumers are people that critically analyze both the product or the idea. So we're going to talk a little bit about the speaker's language. How does that affect what we do? We're going to talk about the evidence that they use and the rhetorical devices, and how these all relate to the speaker's purpose. Ultimately, we can use these to figure out, is what the speaker's saying valid? We'll start out with the simplistic, the advertisements that everybody is bombarded with daily. And we'll look at how do they get us to buy the idea or the product, and what is it that they use. But ultimately we're going to move towards more academic, more thoughtful type of persuasive products, particularly the speeches, and we'll start looking at how does one craft an argument and deliver that to an audience. And as you notice in the last bullet point, our ultimate goal is basically we want to create our own product, and that's the culmination of the unit, is we're going to create our own speeches, whether it's an advertisement or a political service announcement or something of that nature. I want you to think back to expository writing, and I'm going to talk about writing and speaking somewhat interchangeably. Now, obviously there is a difference between the two. The biggest difference is that in speaking you have a few more options available to you. You have the tone of your voice, you have the facial expressions and gestures, and a few other things that you can add to the message that you're sending. But in writing, you're just limited to the words. However, if we were to take some of the greatest speeches ever delivered and strip them down to just the words, you'd note that the quality of the words is incredible. And that's what we're going to focus on, is how the speaker delivers what they're saying, and put that together. So in comparing that to the writing process, or the writer's model that we talked about in the last unit, let's think about expository writing. What was the definition of expository writing? I know exactly what you were thinking. You were thinking to explain, to give information, and that's absolutely correct. If you remember, we also said that a close cousin to expository writing was persuasive writing. And we said that they're both similar in one aspect. What was that aspect? Yes, Jimmy, information. Very good. And it's the information that they both give. However, persuasive is slightly different. The difference between persuasive and expository writing is that if you notice, the persuasive has only a small amount of information, whereas expository is this entire circle. So actually, persuasive writing is going to give you a limited amount of information. It's limited by the goals that you're trying to accomplish, whereas expository is less limited. It's going to include more information, more extraneous information. So let's think of it from this perspective. When you're trying to persuade someone, you are either trying to get them to do something, believe something, or change their mind. And if you think of it from that perspective, a good way to remember that is DBC. Kind of like IBC root beer, my favorite beverage. In this case, it would be DBC. So think of it from this perspective. If I am selling my 97 Neon, what things would I say to an audience that I'm trying to sell it to? And what things would I avoid saying? Obviously, some of the things I would say would be some of the good things, the good points. It's low gas mileage, it's very reliable, and it's going to get you where you need to go. I'm going to avoid saying that it's an old car and it has high mileage on it and that it's very slow, because that's not going to help me sell the car. And again, that ties in with my primary goal, which is trying to get you to do something, which is purchase the product. So let's talk about how you persuade people. Well, basically there are three aspects to persuading. Your goals, which is always the beginning point. What do you want to accomplish? And then who you're trying to persuade. And finally, how you're going to persuade. And that's the approach. So let's talk about the target audience. When you're talking marketing or advertising, that term comes up, target audience. Other types of persuasion usually don't say target audience, but it's pretty much the same thing. So if I'm going to sell this 97 Neon, how would it be different if I am making that sales pitch to a 16-year-old teenager as opposed to their adult parents? Obviously there would be a difference in the way I would pitch the sale. For the 16-year-old teenager, I probably would say something like, imagine yourself not having to walk everywhere you go. All of your friends want to hang out with you because they want to be able to be driven to certain places. And of course, there's the bell. And of course, they're going to want to be seen in that car listening to that great new sound system. Whereas if I'm pitching it to an adult parent, the pitch is going to be different. I might focus on the safety of the car, the reliability, the value because it's a low price, and even the gas mileage. So obviously my target, considering my audience, I need to consider what would be appropriate to them. The type of language I use needs to be appropriate. The interest level has to be there. I've got to consider the age, the gender, the demographics. And finally, I need to establish some credibility. Well, let's talk about fishing for a moment. If I'm trying to figure out whether or not I'm going to sell or buy a fishing rod, the person I might approach would be my father, who's been fishing for 60 years. And the question is why? Well, he has credibility because he's been fishing for 60 years. He's got quite a bit of experience and knowledge. And finally, we're going to focus on approach, and that'll be the second part of this video.